Could Kyer Elam be switching to safety? And do we need to temper our expectations for Cole Bishop? Let's talk about it. You're watching Buffalo Live. Hello everyone and welcome to Buffalo Live, your one-stop shop for live professional play-by-play reaction to every Buffalo Bills game this fall, plus discussion on defensive coordinator Bobby BABICH and his appearance with the media this past Tuesday. I'm your host Kyle. Really appreciate you joining us. Without further ado, let's talk about it. Bobby BABICH had a 20-minute interview with the media this past Tuesday, and I have watched and rewatched literally probably, I want to say 5 times, the interview to really pick up on all of the sneaky, hidden details that give us an inside peek into what he's thinking as the defensive coordinator and what the Bills organization is thinking about this defense in general, so that you don't have to do that. So, here we go. The first thing Bobby BABICH was asked about was his interviews with other teams during this offseason. It was reported that 3 teams were interested in him. That's the Green Bay Packers, Miami Dolphins, and the New York Giants. And I decided to look at where these defenses ranked this past year because, let's be honest, when you are being interviewed for a job, you want to make sure that when you go there, or if you're going to go there, you will be put into a position to succeed. You want to be sure that they will give you the tools to succeed, right? If you go to a job, they hire you, great, and they give you the oldest computer from the dustiest library and the internet runs at 50 megabits per second, you're not really in a great position to help them succeed, right? So in the same point, when you're a defensive coordinator in the NFL or you're being interviewed for one, I would want to know, where did your defense rank last year? What kind of players do you have? And I'm not going to go that deep into it. I really just looked up what were their yards allowed per game. And so if you look, drop my notes here. If you look at the 2 teams that he probably interviewed with, there were 3 reported that were interested in him, but the 2 that probably interviewed him, one was definitely the Giants, and the other one was probably Miami. Don't quote me on that. It hasn't been confirmed, but that's what my gut is telling me since the Dolphins are so familiar with the Bills and everything about them being in the same division. The Buffalo Bills, first of all, yards allowed per game were 9th in the NFL. Okay, so that's pretty high. That's top-tier defense in the league last year. The Dolphins were right behind them at 10th. Okay, so if Bobby BABICH were to have gone to Miami, you're not looking at a super big difference statistically as far as how these teams performed last season. How about the Giants? The Giants were all the way down at 27th in the league for yards allowed per game. So if he did go to the Giants, it would have been probably a big change in production, what these 2 defenses, how they stack up. You got Buffalo on one hand, 9th best in the NFL last year, and then you've got the Giants, 27th. So he said he had to make a decision for his family, and he chose to stick with Buffalo. And a lot of times, I don't know if this is how it works in the NFL, but in my industry, when you leave to go to a different company, you are way more likely to end up making more money than if you stay with the current company and get promoted. That's just how the industry works, and I venture to say that that's the case for most industries. So I'm really curious if Bobby BABICH said, I'm going to choose to get the raise here. It's not going to pay as much, but I know I have a great defense. I know it'll be a great place for my family who's been here for years. I don't know about the pay situation, but Bobby BABICH said firmly that he believed his best chance to further his career was with the Buffalo Bills. He was next asked about how important it was to have worked at multiple positions before becoming a defensive coordinator. So he worked with the safeties with Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer for so many years, and then he became the linebackers coach last year or 2 years ago and worked with Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano and then Terrell Bernard. And he said that when he was a kid, when he was a player, he played DB and that his passion has always been the defensive backfield. He said when he first started coaching, it wasn't to exclusively coach DBs. It was to coach football. But becoming the linebackers coach, he said it was a great opportunity for him to get uncomfortable and grow as a coach. So he said, quote, "I was most anxious about being the individual linebacker coach. I could do a DB individual coaching position, no problem. But it forced me to grow and reach out to people that have coached that position I'm not familiar with, and really dive head in first and spend a lot of time trying to figure out what would work for the way that I would want to structure things in the end to help the Bills. Obviously, I think that was a tremendous growth experience. You get closer to the front, you learn all the operation and execution at the level versus the secondary. It makes you reach outside your comfort zone." So picture a guy, played DB his whole life. He goes to the NFL. He eventually becomes the position coach for the DBs. And all of a sudden, he's thrusted into a position he's never played and never coached. And he took Matt Milano to an all-pro level. He took Tremaine Edmonds to a level where he was the highest paid linebacker free agent in the NFL that following season. So that is why, ultimately, the Bills, at least partially ultimately, why they have taken a chance on BABICH to be their defensive coordinator, is because he proved himself to be great in dealing with an uncomfortable situation and dealing with a new position. So here he is as the defensive coordinator, and let me just say this. An answer like that, and just the whole press conference, you really get the sense that BABICH is both humble and confident, right? And that's really the culture that McDermott has preached for so long, ever since he's been there, right? Humble and hungry, right? So you get that humility out of some of these answers we're about to read, but also a hunger, a confidence, and a belief in himself. Really appreciate that about him. I think that's why his players love him so much. Players like Tyrell Dodson, players like Von Miller, what they've said about him. It's really easy to see why they'd like a guy that much who he's just a humble guy, but believes in himself so strongly and believes in his players. Love that. He was next asked about his relationship with Terrell Bernard. So again, BABICH was the linebacker coach for Bernard for both his rookie and sophomore season. Rookie year, Bernard didn't play much, obviously. That's when Edmonds was still here. And he admitted he is probably not the easiest coach for rookies to be around. He creates chaos and anxiety. He did that for Bernard early in his career. But he mentioned a sense of trust that's being and that has been developed between each other. He said, quote, "But we were close when he was a rookie. I've known the whole time the type of player he is. It was just a matter of when we could get him comfortable and executing at that high of a level." And that really made me think, who is that the case for currently? Who's the player that BABICH or McDermott or someone else has that confidence in, knows that this is a guy who can succeed at a high level, but just isn't comfortable yet? You know, for Matt Milano's role, the next linebacker up for the Bills to eventually have to say goodbye to, I mean, who knows? It could be Bernard, but Milano, I just said that since Milano's older. Is it Dorian Williams? Is it Edifuan Ulafusio, actually. Sorry, still working on pronunciations here. Is it Balin Spector, right? So which of these guys does BABICH look at and is like, I have the confidence in him, it's just a matter of he's got to get more comfortable. So we'll see. And then how about Rasul Douglas's role, right? He's eventually going to move on. He's got one more year left on his deal. Is it Kyer Elam? Is it Jamarcus Ingram? Is it Daquan Hardy? I don't know, but I'm very, very curious to see how all that unfolds for those two guys. Next question, he was asked about his relationship with head coach Sean McDermott and how to get the best out of this defense with him as the head coach and BABICH as the DC. He said, quote, he said, "I am a fool if I don't use Sean McDermott. I've always looked at Sean as a mentor. Already I'm picking his brain on things every day. Every day I'm in his office saying, hey, how would you handle this? And I probably wear him out a little bit." He said, "You look back at 2011, I'm a 26-year-old that thinks he knows football. I did not know football. Now I'm here in this position with him. I would hope that I do believe this relationship we've built over the past 13 years would help that. So there's no doubt to me that's a benefit having that relationship." I summarize it this way. This is not Bobby Babich's defense, and this is not Sean McDermott's defense. It's their defense together. It doesn't really feel like one guy has ultimate responsibility. They share this responsibility together, and I love that. especially after a season where, last year it was Sean McDermott's defense, and he proved himself to be a more than capable defensive coach still, right? And so, but he went out there and promotes Bobby Babich. You're wondering if this gives more time. It will definitely give more time for McDermott to be in the offensive rooms and be the head coach he needs to be and focus on the game, focus on the clock, focus on his challenges. So, yeah. Next question, he was asked about Von Miller. And it was kind of interesting how he responded because he admitted that he did not pay much attention to Von being the linebacker coach last season. I mean, obviously, who would, right? You're focused on the linebackers, but he just said he saw flashes of the Von we're all used to seeing towards the end of the year last year, but I don't think he was really he didn't really sound like he was quick to hype him up or anything. It's just rep by rep, minute by minute for Von Miller. Next, he was asked about Kaiir Elam, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this today. He said, quote, "The only thing we've asked Kaiir is to go rep by rep, drill by drill, minute by minute. We've got a clean slate for Kaiir. He's working extremely hard. There are moments of adversity in what you're doing or scheme execution where you got to get better in certain things. He's working extremely hard. I think his mindset is where it needs to be. Coach Adai and Coach Dana are doing a great job with him honing on the little things where we know he needs to improve." And I was like, wait a second. Coach Dana is the safeties coach. He's not the cornerbacks coach. He's specifically the safeties coach. Now, this could be nothing, right? At this point in the offseason, you're not even really in pads. You're working out. You're doing drills. You're working on your stance and your form and technique. So, this could be nothing, but it also could be that we need to watch out for Kaiir Elam taking reps at safety this summer and this fall. He could have mentioned Coach Scott Booker's name, who's the nickelback coach, but he didn't. He mentioned Coach Adai, obviously, who is the cornerback coach, and Coach Dana. So maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. But there was a big emphasis on adjusting that big scope focus to just, Kaiir, let's go rep by rep and focus on each minute what you're doing. I think this is great instruction for Kaiir. Don't worry about being a first-round pick anymore. Just play hard every play. So next he was asked about creating chaos and anxiety for first-time player Gable Steveson. And it was really interesting to think about, these NFL head coaches, or not head coaches, but positional coaches and coaches in general. They are teaching these guys that have been playing sometimes for their whole lives and at high levels in college football, right? It's interesting to think about these coaches having to teach literally the fundamentals of the fundamentals. What is a 3-point stance? What is a 4-point stance? What is the line of scrimmage? Now, I'm sure Gable Steveson probably knows. He's probably watched football before, but really talking about the stuff you learned in Pee Wee football. Von Miller mentioned it in his interview. That's really what Gable Steveson is learning right now. And so that's really interesting to think about. And I don't think that Bills fans should expect this guy to make any contributions, honestly, his first season. He signed a 3-year deal. And so the Bills organization is going to take things slow with him. They're not having super high expectations at this point. We're just going to try and teach you the fundamentals. But BABICH did admit, Coach McDermott's got a background in wrestling. He loves wrestling, and so that definitely impacted his interest in Gable Steveson. He said, quote, "We got to start at ground zero. There's some physical tools, athletic traits, things that hopefully will translate for him. But let's start at the small details of the position and see where it goes from there. You never know how fast they can learn until you start somewhere." So that's the other thing. Maybe this guy picks up these lessons that are being taught very quickly. And that would be awesome to see him factor in maybe as a depth piece for the Bills this season. Next, he was asked about Jamil Adai, the cornerbacks coach. And I am also really excited to talk about Coach Adai because I really think this is a name, this is a guy that Bills Mafia really needs to know his name. So his positional coach experience, he's got 6 years of college-level experience. First, he was the DB coach at the University of Minnesota in 2018. Then he becomes the cornerback coach in West Virginia for 2 years. Then goes to Georgia, where they win a national championship as the DB coach. And finally, he spent the past 2 seasons at Miami. Okay? Now, within those 6 years, Addae has been personally responsible for coaching 10 draft picks. Think about that. 10 draft picks over the past 6 years. That is averaging almost 2 NFL prospects a year. He's had 1 first-rounder, Lewis Klein, from his time in Georgia, went to Minnesota. He's still with the Vikings today. Tyreek Stevenson was a second-round pick out of Miami. This past draft, not literally this past draft, but the draft in 2023, Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback. He's had a 3rd-round pick, 2 5th-round picks, a 6th-round pick, and 3 7th-round picks. So the other interesting thing about this is none of those guys, and I could read their names, but I'm about to just tell you, none of these guys are particularly well known, which I think is very interesting because that tells you that he got the most out of these players, right? It's not like he was, dealing with an Ed Reed in college out of Miami, and this guy's going to be successful, first-round pick, whatever, future Hall of Famer. Addae made these players look NFL ready by the time they left college, okay? And so I think that's very interesting. And to me, Addae is the leader of the Kaiir Elam Reclamation Project. He's not focused on Rasul Douglas. Taron Johnson has his own coach. Safeties have their own coach. He is focused on developing these young guys, specifically Elam, but also Benford and the rest of the younger guys. BABICH said, quote, he is extremely detailed. This is about Addae. Extremely detailed, extremely professional. He works his butt off. He is going to bring a great presence for the corner specifically. He is going to hone in on the smallest parts of the technical parts of that position. Really excited the Bills now have a cornerback-specific coach. They didn't have that before. Addae, let's see what he can do developing these young players. Next, he was asked about Marcus West. That's the defensive line coach who comes in after Coach Washington leaves for Chicago. What were Marcus West's strengths? He said his smartness and his work ethic. He admitted Marcus West was he probably worked more hours than anybody, including himself, which is very, it's not easy for an NFL coach to admit. You are supposed to outwork everyone. You get there at 5 a.m., you leave at 6 p.m., and so for BABICH to admit, hey, this guy worked harder than me, that says a lot about, what kind of effort Marcus West put in as the assistant defensive line coach. Now he is the defensive line coach. And I also like how BABICH said he had a 2-year interview, essentially, as the assistant D-line coach. So this is a guy that the Bills are very confident in. And let's see. This is a defensive line that hasn't been able to meet the task in the playoffs. Can Marcus West be that coach who gets them over the hump there? Next, he was asked what he's seen in safety Cole Bishop and his versatility. And this is what he said. He said, quote, I see a bright future, but he's a rookie. Joe Dana is doing everything he can to bring him up to speed as quickly as possible. Now, listen, this is just a press conference with the media, but you know how I react to that? Yikes. He did not hype him up one bit. He completely doused any Cole Bishop flames if there were, to be further lit. You could have been hoping for, man, this guy doesn't even practice like a rookie. He has come in and, he is acting like he's been in the league for a while now. And that is not what you got. He said, I see a bright future, but he's a rookie. And he just kind of ended on, it was very brief. That's basically all he said. But it made me think maybe we need to temper our expectations for Bishop in this rookie season. Maybe he's not the guy who's going to come in and compete for a starting position immediately. I mean, he's got 2 guys that are decent starters ahead of him with Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards. So, maybe this is a red shirt year, a special teams year for Cole Bishop. And then his second season, maybe we can expect more out of him. But It's really interesting how his tone of voice and how quickly he answered that question and was just ready to move on. He was asked about re-signing Daquan Jones. He talked about his consistency and his leadership. He said, quote, "He is the same every day. Same work ethic, same attention to detail. He provides leadership for us. We talk about you're either growing every day or you're dying every day. He is constantly working to that growth." If Daquan Jones can stay healthy this year, I really think he has the chance to become an all-pro level defensive tackle. Someone who him and Ed Oliver paired right there, 1-tech, 3-tech, that's a dangerous duo. And if we can get them on the same field for 17 games in the regular season, yikes, that's a lethal combination for offensive lines. So love what he had to say about Jones. He was asked about Nickelback Taron Johnson's leadership. And BABICH paused, and I counted, for 6 solid seconds before responding. And that is the type of coach that you want. Someone who, even in his minor job responsibilities, like talking to the media, he takes what he does seriously. And so just that, I mean, setting a Taron Johnson aside, I think that is an element of Bobby Babich that you can really, see, and just how he addresses the media. Great communicator, takes pride in what he does. But he said Taron Johnson, he's having to speak up more in the void of Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Trey White. All 3 veteran leaders gone just like that, one off season. And he used the word professional 3 times to describe Taron Johnson. He's a professional. He goes about things professionally, and so love that. Love that you can see Taron Johnson taking a bigger leadership role, and I think he's an easy candidate for a captain position this next season. And kind of to close out Babich's interview, I wanted to say he mentioned taking things minute by minute 5 times during the 20-minute interview. So that is clearly a motto for him and for his defense. Similarly to the offensive skill players motto, everyone's going to eat. For BABICH, it seems like what he's trying to really, train his players is take every minute seriously. And I love that attention to detail, love that focus that he's trying to ingrain on the guys. And one little note on Von Miller's press conference, he said that he's been practicing without a knee brace, which I find interesting. And the reason it's interesting because he said it was something he was not able to do last year. And so we all know Von Miller is one to hype up and speak in exaggerations. But to me, that says a lot, that he wasn't able to practice with it last year, and now he is. And so who knows, man? Maybe that was all he really needs, is just one solid off season where he's feeling good, no knee brace, and he can be back to being Von Miller. So we'll see. I'm hesitant to expect anything out of Von at this point. I've said on this channel that I was skeptical of the signing when it happened because I knew how old Von Miller was. So, honestly, if the Bills can just sub him in fourth quarter, third down situations where he can be Von Miller and not really need to use him first, second, third quarter, I'd love that. I think that's a good way to use him. So that is going to do it for this episode of Buffalo Live. I want to thank you for watching, and I'm curious, really love starting discussions in the comments section. What did you think about Babich's interview? Some of these comments, what do you think about Kaiir Elam transitioning to safety? Or how about Taron Johnson becoming the de facto secondary leader for this defense? How about Jamil Adai as the cornerbacks coach? Is this a guy you really have a whole lot of faith in to develop Elam, Benford, other young corners? Let me know in the comments. Let's start a discussion. I will be having a deep dive on the Detroit Lions coming out soon. I know I've mentioned it last week as well. Just really trying to put a lot of quality effort into that. And so really excited for that to release. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like. And if you want to see more, subscribe. Till next time, I'm Kyle, and you're watching Buffalo Live. Go Bills! and God bless.